Hello everyone, it's Jen from Old Tinkerer Studio. In this tutorial, we will be learning how to make procedural concrete texture in Blender 2.83. So let's get on with the tutorial. Delete the cube and add a UV sphere. Add a subdivision surface modifier with a viewport of 2. Then right-click and shade smooth. Apply the modifier. Under the shading workspace, add a new texture. Then change the base color to a gray. I am using the hex code of D2D1CD. Now add a Musgrave texture node. Connect the factor output of the Musgrave texture node to the base color of the BSDF shader. Then change the detail, dimension, and lacunarity as desired. I'm going to change my detail to 4.5, dimension of 0, and the lacunarity to 3. So let's take a look at this node. The factor output is the texture value. The dimension option is the dimension of the space to evaluate the noise in. The FBM, which is fractional Brownian motion, produces an unnatural, homogeneous, and isotropic result. The vector input evaluates the noise. If it's an empty socket, it'll default to generated. The scale option scales the base noise octave. The detail option is the number of noise octaves. The dimension option is the difference between the magnitude of each 2 consecutive concaves. The lacunarity option is the difference between the scale of each 2 consecutive octaves. Make sure that you have the Node Wrangler add-on active. Select the Musgrave texture node and hit Ctrl-T to add a mapping and texture coordinates nodes. Now connect the object output of the texture coordinate node to the vector input of the mapping node. The object output uses an object as a source for the coordinate. Now add a Voronoi texture node. Then connect the vector output of the mapping node to the vector input of the Voronoi texture. Then change the scale to the desired size. I am going to change mine to 300. Now let's look at the Voronoi texture node. The distance output affects the distance produced by the texture. The color output is the cell color, which is arbitrary. The position output is the position of the featured point. The dimension option is the dimensions of the space to evaluate the noise in. The feature option is the node that will compute and return the distance to a feature point, as well as its position and color. The distance option is the metric used to compute the texture. The vector option is the texture coordinate that evaluates the noise. It's default to generated if the socket is empty. The scale option is the scale of the noise. And the randomness option is the randomness of the noise. Add a mix RGB node. Connect the factor output from the Musgrave texture to the top color input of the mix shader. And connect the color output of the Voronoi texture to the bottom color input of the mixed node. Connect the color output of the Mix RGB node to the base color of the BSDF shader. Now add a color ramp between the Mix RGB node and the BSDF shader. Then slide the white color stop to the left until you achieve the desired look. I'm going to place mine at position 0.032. Then change this white color stop to a gray color. I'm using the hex code of D2D1CD. Then change the factor of the Mix RGB node to achieve the desired look. I'm going to change mine to 0.7. Add a bump node. Connect the color output of the Mix RGB node to the height input of the bump node. Then connect the normal output of the bump node to the normal input of the BSDF shader. And change the strength of the bump node to achieve the desired look. I'm going to change mine to 0.150. And select all of your nodes except for the BSDF and the material output node and join them with Ctrl J. You can rename the frame by right-clicking. I'm going to call mine base material. Now we're going to add some imperfections to the concrete. Add a Voronoi texture. Select the Voronoi texture and hit Ctrl T to add a mapping and texture coordinate nodes. And then change the scale to the desired size. I'm going to change mine to 20. Then connect the object output of the texture coordinate node to the vector input of the mapping node. Now add a second color ramp. Connect the color output of the second Voronoi node to the factor input of the color ramp. Add a second bump node. Connect the color output of the second color ramp to the height input of the second bump node. Then connect the normal output of the second bump node to the normal input of the first bump node. Then slide the white color stop of the second color ramp until it's almost on top of the black color stop. I'm going to change my position to 0.027. You can now see cracks forming on the concrete. Change the strength of the bump node until you have the desired look. I'm going to change mine to 0.5. Now add a second Mix RGB node. Connect the color output of the original color ramp to the top color input of the Mix RGB node. And connect the color output of the second color ramp to the bottom color input of the Mix RGB node. And change the blend mode to multiply. And this will darken the cracks. Then select all of your nodes except for the new Mix RGB node. And join them with Ctrl J. And then rename the frame to cracks. If you're interested in learning more about 3D art and animation, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.